Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic part 1. Which is what if Temari walks into Konoha with the fate of Suna on her shoulders part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Fear was nothing new to Temari. It was an aspect of her everyday life since she was a child. And yet this time was different. This time there was more than just her life at stake, and much more weight sitting on her shoulders. Things were tense on all sides. Everyone was on edge and there was no shortage of suspicion. Greater minds were working overtime to think of solutions. Everything from surrender to an all-out war had been considered. But at the end of the day, it was all just wasted time between bickering old men. War was obviously out of the question. Even the most arrogant-minded individuals of Suna weren't able to lie to themselves enough to think they stood a chance against Konoha, especially after what happened during the Chunin exams. No one wanted a repeat of the humiliation that was handed to them. Surrender was suicide at this stage. If Suna showed any sign of weakness after losing so many shinobi, they would become the target of any and all villages with enough guts and ambition. They could defend their home well enough, but they couldn't afford to be trapped in a siege. Desperation had gotten the better of them. They had chewed at every straw, reached farther than they had wanted, even begged for an outcome that didn't leave them at a clear disadvantage. From a political standpoint, they were ed. That hopelessness and desperation, however, did open up avenues that unfortunately led to her current position. She wished she could say she was happy that she could be of use to her village, to be a key player in the salvation of her home and people, but it would be a lie. The failures of Suna had haunted her for so long already. She wanted nothing more than to focus on her life as a shinobi and distance herself from the politics of it. Yet here she was, the gates of Konoha clearly visible in the distance, and her anxiety growing with every step she made. Her hands had long since gone numb from clenching too hard and she couldn't help but feel like she was noticeably sweating. Those traveling with her weren't saying anything, but it was clear that they were aware of her nervousness. They kept walking for a while, slowly making their way up the main road like a bunch of commoners so as to avoid raising any suspicion. A safe approach, maybe, but it was insulting for a shinobi to be forced to give up all tactical advantage in such a manner. Once they were close enough to the gates, Baki ordered the group to stop for a brief rest before being forced to brave the no doubt unpleasant welcome Konoha had waiting for them. Temari took any delay as a blessing, quickly separating herself from the group and finding shade under a tree. Things were moving a little too quickly for her liking. There hadn't been enough time for her to stop and truly process what was happening, what was going to happen. More than ever, she had to rely on her training to keep herself from buckling under the pressure of it all. Her father was dead, her mission a failure, her village humiliated, and now she was being forced to go and grovel at Konoha's feet on behalf of her people. All of this within the span of a month. It was maddening. "Are you all right, Temari?" Baki asked, his one eye showing what little compassion he could without losing face. Temari nodded. "I'm fine," she said. "It's just a lot. No one expects you to hold yourself together during such things," he said. "Letting them see how you feel isn't wrong. They will expect as much. I won't let them have that. They have already taken too much from us as it is. Now is not the time to think of them as the enemy," Baki scolded. "Before our failures, Konoha was a loyal ally to our village. They may not have been kind or generous, but they upheld the rules of our treaty and never attempted to push things. That alone is more than we could have asked for from a more powerful village. Others would have taken advantage. Instead, we were the fools. But that doesn't change the fact that they are screwing us right now." "As they should," Baki said coldly. "We are shinobi, Temari. Things are not black and white. We betrayed their trust, we assaulted their home, and we were allowed to crawl away to lick our wounds. Konoha has shown us a level of mercy that we simply do not deserve. For that, we will do whatever it takes to make up for our mistakes and attempt to re-establish any form of truce that can be salvaged." Temari frowned but didn't dare to say anything back. Baki knew what he was talking about. She had no choice but to trust his wisdom. That didn't make it any easier to swallow her pride. "I don't know if I can do this, Baki," she said. "What if I screw it up?" Baki sighed and put his hand reassuringly on Temari's shoulder. Anything you do from here, be it beneficial for Suna or not, is done with the best intentions. I know it, you know it, and everyone back home knows it, he said. How things go is now entirely up to the Hokage and the Council of Suna. Your part to play is important, but is at best a formality. Anything you can do to help smooth out the peace talks will be more help than you can possibly imagine. I'll do my best. I know what is being asked of you is a lot, but if anyone has the ability to make the most of a difficult situation, it's you, Baki said. Now, I'm sorry, but time is short. We have a schedule to keep and the Hokage is expecting us. Are you ready? Temari nodded. By the time they reached the gate, she had a better grip on her emotions, putting on a facade of confidence as best she could. Entering Konoha was simple enough, save for the dirty looks the gatekeepers gave them. The civilians were much the same. No one was quite game enough to say anything out loud, but their eyes screamed a different story. Forget their reputation for having the most dangerous shinobi, Konoha homed some of the angriest-looking civilians Temari had ever seen. Finally reaching the Hokage residence was a major relief. Temari was sure she heard more than one sigh of relief from the traveling party. A squad of Anbu were quick to circle them at the door and led them through the building until they reached the Hokage's office. Temari was surprised to see not only the Hokage, but also the two elders at either side of him. The elders didn't seem too pleased to see anyone from Suna, but what wasn't missed was how they were eyeing her up like a piece of meat, and if their expressions were anything to go by, they didn't view her as a very good cut. The Hokage's expression wasn't negative, but it wasn't positive either. He looked at least 10 years older than when she had seen him at the Chunin exams, and that was saying a lot considering his age. Welcome to Konoha, the Hokage said. I hope your travel wasn't too much. Thank you, Lord Hokage, Baki said with a bow. Our trip was pleasant enough. I'm sorry to ask, but our ambassadors are tired after the journey and would like some rest. If our talks could hold off until later this evening, we would be most grateful. The elders looked annoyed, but the Hokage gave an understanding nod. Of course, he said. Such matters should not be rushed. Take all the time you need. Perhaps we could focus on other subjects in the meantime, Koharu said, eyeing Temari again. Assuming the girl is up for it. Baki turned to Temari and gave her an assuring look. Temari, he asked. Temari took a moment to steady herself and stepped forward. She waited patiently as Baki ushered the ambassadors off with the Anbu, leaving only herself, her teacher, the Hokage, and the elders in the room. Nerve-wracking was an understatement. After everything that had happened, her involvement in the invasion, the idea of being left to stare down the Hokage himself was enough to make her hand tremble slightly. The door closed and suddenly all eyes were on her. So, you are the late Kazukage's daughter? Koharu said skeptically. I expected more. Easy now, the Hokage said warningly. There is no need for that, Koharu. We are here to establish peace, not rub salt in wounds. Are we even sure this is a good idea? Homura asked. Things are shaky enough as it is without us adding the unpredictability of children into the mix. He makes a point, Hiruzen, Koharu said. It isn't a widely used practice anymore and for good reason. Too often does it fail or backfire. Even with the best of conditions it is too unreliable. Hiruzen hummed in thought as he too eyed Temari closely, watching how she reacted to his old teammates' statements. To his surprise she was holding her composure well for a genin. My advisors make a good point, Baki, he said. Such a practice was fairly outdated even in my time. While I understand the sense of necessity on your part, we are not so ready to force such a thing upon those who might not be as willing to go along with it. Baki gestured to Temari with his hand. If I may, Lord Hokage. Perhaps it would be best for you to talk to Temari herself on what she thinks of the situation, he said, giving the girl's shoulder a comforting squeeze before stepping back and giving her center stage. Well then, Temari, if you would. I would love to hear your side of things, Hiruzen said, motioning for her to speak. Temari bowed deeply to the Hokage and the elders. Thank you, Lord Hokage, she started, doing all she could to contain her nerves. I understand the proposition that has been put forward to me. The council of my village and my sensei have gone to great lengths to explain in detail what would be expected of me and the importance of such a role in these difficult times. It would be my honor and privilege to serve my village in any way that ensures its survival and safety. This is, as far as I see it, the most important task I could ever be given as a shinobi, and as the daughter of a kage. I only hope that I am enough of an offering to appease whomever you nominate. Koharu burst into laughter as soon as Temari finished. Very good, girl. Very good, she said. Even I couldn't have brought myself to spew out such drabble. Your dedication is something to be proud of. That does sound awfully scripted, Homura said. Hiruzen chuckled. Forgive them, my dear. But as I am sure you can guess, we have seen a lot in our lifetimes. Sincerity is a difficult thing to puff, he said. Now, if I could, I want to hear your opinion on the matter. And I do mean your opinion, Temari. There is nothing to gain from reciting whatever your counsel have convinced you to say to us. Temari felt like she was on death's door. She had some minor experience with the political aspects of the villages, but not enough to weave her way through the literal shitstorm that had just presented itself to her in this very moment. On the one hand, she could continue with following the instructions of the Suna Council and say a bunch of pointless nonsense that she couldn't possibly sell as sincere. It would destroy the credibility of her own advisors, most definitely put a major dent in the peace talks, and leave her with a sense of shame she wasn't sure she could survive. On the other hand, she could tell them what she really thought and ruin any and all chances of a truce, most likely get herself and the other Suna diplomats killed, and start a war that they were specifically trying to avoid. It was a lose-lose situation. Somewhere, deep down in her mind, a part of Temari said, If I'm being honest, Lord Hokage. She began. I was not prepared for any of this. Not the invasion, not the defeat, and definitely not this nightmare right now. But that is the life I signed up for. I am a shinobi first and foremost, and I'll be damned if I let my own personal insecurities get in the way of my being anything but an exceptional asset to my village. I love my home and my people. They are relying on me right now and I can't let them down. This decision was made by those much wiser than me with only my village's best interests at heart. I won't let them down. I won't fail my village a second time. So, if you wish to reject the proposal my village has made towards peace, then so be it. But I will stand by the decision and do everything I can to make it work. The room was silent. Baki couldn't help but look down at Temari with pride in his eye. She truly was what any Suna shinobi should strive to be. The elders were both wearing subtle smiles, clearly impressed by the girl's resolve and honesty. It was the Hokage, however, whose expression left something to be desired. He wore a smile, but his eyes were holding back a hesitance of sorts. Temari couldn't tell if it was sadness or fear hidden in the Mon's face, but she wasn't about to let it dissuade her. Are you sure? The Hokage asked softly. We offer this one and only chance to back out. If you choose to continue, then Konoha will officially accept Suna's offer and there will be no going back. I understand, Temari said with certainty. Ha! Finally, a kunoichi with spirit and backbone, Koharu said cheerfully. I can only hope you rub off on some of our youth. We have been sorely lacking in your type of professionalism. I for one strongly approve. I too forward the notion, Homura said. I suppose the matter is settled for the time being, Hiruzen said. Thank you, Lord Hokage, Baki said, bowing deeply. This kindness and respect will not go ignored by our people. If I may, might it be all right if we could meet your village's nominee? The two elders shared an uneasy glance as Hiruzen seemed to develop an entirely different aura. No longer were they in the presence of an old man showing kindness to some poor genin. I'm sorry, but that won't be possible at the present time, he said. I promise I will arrange a meeting for the earliest possible time. If Konoha needs more time to choose a suitable candidate, Baki began. No, Hiruzen interrupted. Sorry, I don't mean to offend. We have come to a decision, but the candidate is currently unavailable and unaware of the situation. Unaware? Temari asked curiously. Nothing to be concerned about, he assured her. We were not ready to make any of this public until we were certain that you were sure of what you were getting into. Our candidate will not be backing down if that is your concern. We trust your choice, Lord Hokage, Baki said. Can I at least have a name? Temari asked, earning a sharp glare from Baki. Sorry, Lord Hokage, I didn't mean to speak out of turn. Hiruzen frowned as he carefully picked up a folder from his desk and held it out towards Temari. Everything you need to know is in here, he said. I would ask, if I might, that you keep an open mind. While everything in this file is true, it does not paint the full picture. Temari was hesitant to go for the folder, but curiosity was everyone's weakness in the end. She made her way to the Hokage's desk and carefully took the file from him. It was heavier than she expected, surprisingly thick in its content. Her internal anxiety was already running miles in her mind, thinking of all the worst-case scenarios that she held in her hand. She couldn't turn back now, but part of her was starting to wish she had taken the option out. She had helped her father from time to time compile information on shinobi, so she had a reasonable idea of how much info was usually attached to different levels of people. What she held in her hand was no civilian or noble's file. They never had enough interesting information to fill more than a few pages. The two options left were either a chunin, or jonin. Both options could be anyone, of any age, and the idea of being stuck with some old guy mortified her. So, without waiting for anyone to say anything else, she quickly flicked the file open to the opening page. A quick glance was all it took to absorb more than she needed. A name, a title, and a rank. Naruto Uzumaki. Jinchuriki. Genin. Hiruzen wanted to scream at something. He wanted so desperately to unleash a rage that had boiled and grown within him for years. Sadly, he could not, and he held his thoughts close to his chest as he bid his two old teammates a good night. They had been surprisingly pleasant today, so he wasn't quite ready to rip their heads off after what was by all means a good job. Once they finally left and closed the door behind them, he felt the weight of the world come crashing down on him. He had failed to try and deter Temari from going along with the proposal, but sadly there was not much he could do. Any more than a simple offer to refuse would be seen as Konoha spitting in Suna's face at the offer. He knew things were going to be rough for the foreseeable future. The poor girl had handled it better than he could have hoped at least. Opening the file in his office was perhaps a mistake, but displaying no more than a brief moment of panic was admirable. It was still panic. Intense panic at that. He had read the reports from the invasion. He knew that Temari and her brothers had a run-in with Naruto, although the full details of said interaction were minimal. She had all but run out of his office after that, her teacher following shortly after. He was concerned when she didn't return with Baki and the ambassadors later in the evening, her absence being attributed to being tired. It was a blatant lie, but who was he to push the subject? The initial peace meeting went well after that. As soon as Konoha's acceptance of Temari was made known, everything else seemed to fall into place rather smoothly. There was still much to go through, and only time would tell what would become of it all, but there was much promise. He let himself fall heavily into his chair and turned to look out at his village. It was quiet. That was good. What with all the chaos that they had seen, the people truly deserved what peace they could get. Have you been listening in the whole time? He asked. Not the whole time, Jiraiya said cheekily, climbing in through the window. Why do my Anbu keep letting you do this? Jiraiya shrugged. Once they realized that they couldn't stop me, I think they just gave up. Hiruzen rolled his eyes. Truly setting a good example for those to come, he drawled. I imagine you have something to say about all this. It's a bad idea, Jiraiya said sharply. You know it, I know it, but everyone else is turning a blind eye to the obvious issues. They all see it as a means to an end. An easy way to get rid of him. They can't do anything so long as he doesn't give them reason. Don't be a fool, Jiraiya said. Anyone else, and I do mean anyone, would be a better fit for this role. Naruto is a loose cannon and that girl has no idea what she is getting herself into. This is shady and unfair on Suna. Do you honestly expect them to uphold whatever truce you make after they realize what you've done? I expect that Suna will put up with whatever they have to for the time being, Hiruzen said. They are desperate and they know that we know that. For them to even propose a political marriage in the first place is enough of a sign that they are willing to do anything to ensure a bond with us. Even if they view our decision as an insult, they have no room to argue. That's cold, even for you. That's war, Jiraiya. We aren't at war. We are always at war. The invasion only made it more obvious, Hiruzen said. Konoha cannot afford to show favoritism to Suna after what they did, and Suna cannot afford to reject what little mercy we are willing to give them. Jiraiya sighed and let it go. He knew how arguing with his teacher would go. How do you think Naruto will react? He asked. I don't expect it to be good. Which is exactly why you're here. Jiraiya deadpanned. I am not a sacrificial pawn, Sarutobi. You are whatever I need you to be, and right now, I need you to be the messenger. I hate you. Duly noted. On the outside, Temari was trying to be the pinnacle of calm and collected. Her instincts were working overdrive to ensure that her body didn't betray the raging chaos burning in her mind. Internally, she had been screaming at the top of her lungs since the moment she left the Hokage's office. Out of fear or anger, she wasn't quite sure yet, but she wasn't in the right mind to find out. Every fiber of her being was telling her to run, to forego her pride and loyalty and save her own skin. If she could just get a clean run out of the village and out to freedom, she would. No. Thinking like that would get her killed. It would ruin her village, and worse, it would piss Baki off. She pulled her knees to her chest and leant back against the head of the bed. Thankfully Konoha was especially generous as a host. Each and every member of those that had come from Suna were given their own hotel room. If hers was anything to go by, they were not skipping on any expense. The place was big and open, empty feeling. She had tried to have a shower to drown away the mess of thoughts. It didn't help. All she could do was stare blankly at the folder spread out on the bed. She had gone through it all in record time, something she now regretted deeply. Blissful ignorance would have been extremely appreciated right now. This whole bullshit plan was supposed to get her away from such things. Away from the fear and danger of her life back in Suna, away from Gaara. But now she was in a worse position than before. At least with Gaara she had the peace of mind that he wouldn't just kill her for no reason. Naruto was an unknown element to her, and a very dangerous one at that. Temari had seen very little of the boy and his actions during the Chunin exams, but what she had seen would haunt her for some time to come. He was strong, inhumanly so even for a shinobi. Lacked any fear of death and appeared to hold no one's life in high regard, including those of his fellow shinobi. His file only seemed to confirm his brutality and carelessness. In some ways, his file was more unnerving than Gaara's. It didn't give any real reasons as to why he was the way he was, nor did it seem to imply that there was any reliable method of controlling or directing his actions. I'm so Ed, Temari thought to herself. There was a gentle knock at her door that pulled her back to reality. She put the papers back into the folder and got up to open the door and was relieved to find Baki on the other side. Are you holding up all right? He asked softly. She nodded. I'll be okay, she said. I just didn't expect it to be this bad. Baki gave a slight grunt of acknowledgement. Their decision is a curious one, he said. The thought of using a Jinchuriki for such a thing is unheard of. I don't see what advantage they are hoping to gain from it, but sadly we are in no position to argue. I know, but it doesn't make sense, Temari said. I've been reading everything in the file the Hokage gave me and nothing stands out. He doesn't have a clan, no bloodline limit, or any political connections of value. I thought political marriages were meant to be used strategically to benefit each village as much as possible. I just can't see how they are benefiting from this. It is an outdated practice, Temari. Long gone are the times when a simple marriage could be used to gain significantly valuable assets. Konoha has all the leverage here. They could very well be content with only attaining a symbol of peace between us, and a deterrent, he said. Is that all I am? All I'm worth to them? What you are to them is not important. What and who you are to us is everything, Baki said. You are the eldest child of our late Kage, a loyal shinobi, and you were the only one, of all the candidates, that our village unanimously agreed was not only capable, but also trustworthy enough to be considered for such a thing. You are the hope of Suna. You are a symbol of strength and sacrifice to our people. Suna will not forget what you will accomplish here. I won't allow it. Temari scoffed. That's only if I don't get killed first. Baki took a moment wander over to the bed and pick up the file, looking through it curiously. Naruto Uzumaki, he read aloud. Genin. Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Student of Kakashi Hatake. Responsible for death of Zabuza Momochi and Gato of Wave Country. From what I saw during the Chunin exams, he was a rather reserved boy until the fighting started. The brutality he unleashed on that girl from Odo was unsettling. Our reports say that he was the one that fought Gaara during the invasion, is that right? He's the one that beat Gaara, Temari said. Do you know how he accomplished such a feat? Temari shuddered. I wasn't able to keep up with the whole fight, she admitted. I know he was able to summon shadow clones, more than anyone should be able to. Gaara might as well have been fighting an army. And his chakra, it was leaking out of him, like a red ooze in the form of a fox. It melted through the sand. By the time we caught up to Gaara it was over. He was covered in burns and beaten to a pulp. And Naruto? Baki asked. Drenched in blood, but barely a mark on him. He just stood there and watched us take Gaara away. Didn't say a word. Jinchuriki are more dangerous than people think these days. But I don't need to remind you of that. He is still only a genin, but he will only get more dangerous from here on, Baki said. You have more experience than anyone in how to deal with being around such a person. We gave Gaara a reason not to touch you and Konkuro, but we can't strong-arm this boy like that. The most important task for you right now is giving him a reason to keep you around. How am I supposed to do that? Sadly, that will have to be up to you, Temari, he said. But I have complete faith in you. Now, get some sleep. Tomorrow will be more of a headache than today and you'll need all the energy you can spare. Temari wasn't sure if she could groan loud enough or roll her eyes back far enough at the thought of what was to come. Politics. Temari had not slept well. Between compulsively rereading every word in Naruto's file and overthinking every possible scenario of the near future, there just wasn't enough time to sleep. Baki would have something smart to say about her poor self-control, but luckily, he was tied up for the day. As it turned out, her part to play in the peace talks was easily dismissed after she agreed to the marriage. The Hokage and his advisors had claimed there was no point in wasting her time when she should be using it to better get to know her new home. Glancing down at the piece of paper in her hand, she grimaced. A list of noteworthy spots to see around Konoha and places for her to get familiar with. It almost hurt to read. She already knew many of the important parts of the village. They were the first points of reconnaissance before the invasion, not to mention comically unguarded. Some of the list made sense, like the training grounds, mission office, shinobi library, among several other locations that she didn't have the motivation to seek out and explore. No, her interest was in one place and one place only. Apartment 23. It was the only place that wasn't on her list that definitely should have been. Actually, it didn't make much sense to her as to why it wasn't on the list at all. Naruto's apartment should have been a priority. If she was truly going to go ahead with this marriage and be stuck living here, then it made sense she would end up living with her future husband. Oh, how the word made her spine twist at just the thought. She was supposed to be a kunoichi. Marriage had never crossed her mind, and for good reason. Even back when boys had become somewhat interesting to her, it had never been in such a way. Her whole retirement plan was to just die gloriously somewhere on the battlefield, not marry, grow old, or God forbid, spawn children. Sadly, her dreams of service and glory were quite dead at this stage. Whatever laid before her now was unplanned chaos at best. As such, Temari thought it smart to try and be as prepared for the worst as she could be. For the moment, being prepared meant breaking into Naruto's apartment and seeing what she was dealing with. Finding the place was easy enough. He didn't live anywhere particularly special or hidden. It was a modest place, perhaps a little run down, but not as bad as she had expected. What she didn't expect was the word, Kyubi, to be carved so boldly on the door. Temari took her time scoping the place out. Naruto was a shinobi, so traps and defenses were always a possibility. It came as some surprise, however, when it became clear that he had gone to no such lengths to protect his home, what with the window to the apartment being left open and not a single trap to be seen. Upon climbing inside, she soon realized why. He owned practically nothing. Sure, she had heard of people living on the bare necessities, but this was taking it a step too far. He had no real furniture save for a single bed and a fridge she wasn't even sure was working properly if the smell was anything to go by. It was small too. Maybe even too small. Her bedroom alone was larger back in Suna. I have to live here, she thought to herself, an expression of serious regret threatening to cement itself on her face. Already planning the decorations? A voice asked behind her. Temari whipped around only to come face to face with an all too familiar mask and single-eyed smile. Or perhaps you were trying to catch my dear student alone for a more conjugal visit? Kakashi asked slyly. Wasn't, Temari stumbled nervously on her words as she tried to think of a decent excuse. There wasn't one. I just wanted to see where I'd be living, she admitted with a defeated sigh. Then I'm afraid you are very misinformed, Kakashi said, casually pulling out a small orange-covered book. This was Naruto's apartment. Once he gets back, however, he will be relocated as part of the process. Relocated? Temari questioned. Process? Yes, relocated, Kakashi repeated. Let's just say that despite how the village views my student, they are not so dense as to think they can treat you as they do him. I'm not following, she said. And why the hell are you here anyway? Have you been following me? If Suna found out that we put their cage's daughter in such a questionable dwelling, well, one could only imagine the insult they would feel, Kakashi explained. No. As much as they will hate it, Konoha will make this whole thing as comfortable and rewarding for you as possible. And I wouldn't call it following. More curious snooping. Still creepy if you ask me. Good thing I didn't ask. Temari rolled her eyes. What do you want? Just keeping an eye on things, he said. You'd be surprised how often someone tries to break in here in hopes of finding something to use against Naruto. So, you two are close? Temari asked hopefully. From what she could see, there was nothing in the apartment she could use to learn much of anything about Naruto, but if she could talk to someone who knew him better, like his sensei, then that could definitely help her plan her approach. Regrettably no, Kakashi admitted. I keep an eye on the place, and I am his sensei, but Naruto doesn't trust me much. Temari stared pointedly at the man's masked face. Go figure, she mumbled as she returned to looking around for clues. Aside from a poster for ramen, there was nothing to take note of. She did spot a small green frog-shaped pouch barely concealed under the pillow on the bed, but she chose to leave that be. This place is useless. You were hoping to get an insight into him, weren't you? She shrugged. Can you blame me? She asked. I didn't exactly talk to him during the Chunin exams. All I have to go off is the file the Hokage gave me, and even that was vague. Perhaps I could help. You said you weren't close. Does a shinobi need to be close to someone in order to know things about them? He asked. Temari quirked an eyebrow at him. Has anyone else ever told you how creepy you are? Many times, he said dismissively. Now, what are you trying to learn about my dear student? I guess I just want to know what I'm in for, Temari said unsurely. What kind of person he is? Maybe an idea as to what my life is going to be like with him. Kakashi seemed to study her face for a moment before nodding in understanding. You're worried, after what you saw during the Chunin exams? Temari crossed her arms in annoyance. Can you blame me? No, Kakashi answered. You are not alone in your fears. There are many who now fear Naruto. Not just for what he is, but what he is capable of. I don't care what he is. Temari said harshly. I have lived with a Jinchuriki for most of my life. I know what to expect of that. What I don't know is what him being a Jinchuriki has turned him into. What this village has turned him into. Oh, she sneered at him. Don't play stupid, she said. My brother didn't just become a murderous psycho on his own. I know what happens to Jinchuriki. What villages try to make them into. So, what is he? Kakashi actually put his book away at that. He had not expected such a question, least not from someone so young, or from another village. He let out a deep sigh as he sat down on the window. We didn't attempt to make a weapon of him, if that's what you're implying, he began. Naruto is, for a lack of better words, troubled. Temari rolled her eyes. You're not going to be very helpful to me, are you? She asked rhetorically, already making her way to the door. At least do me the favor of not letting him know I was snooping around his place. Don't let your guard down, Kakashi said just before Temari could close the door behind her. He's not a monster. But you must be prepared. There is more to him than you will learn from just observing or asking others. You should try and learn from him personally. And if I can offer advice on how to approach that, I would say, slowly. Temari turned to say something only to realize that Kakashi had already left. She figured his cryptic form of insight was the best she was going to get for a while, and so she closed the door behind her and made off for the market section of the village. There was nothing worth stressing over on an empty stomach, and she still had several places to scope out before the day was over. It took a little while, along with some advice from the locals, but eventually she settled her search for food on a rather modest barbecue place called the Yakiniku Q. It seemed like a rather nice place, and the few people she had asked spoke high praises of it. She did her best to ignore the obvious sneers the staff directed at her as she was led to a small booth by herself and left with a small menu. It was not as busy as she would have expected given the time of day, although perhaps it served best as an evening meal type. Either way, Temari appreciated the quiet atmosphere and significant lack of eyes leering at her. Much to Temari's annoyance, and as if to spite her very thoughts, the peace and quiet was disastrously cut short. A small group of loud individuals had entered, yelling and bickering as they were happily greeted by the staff. Temari almost took the moment to rethink her choice of restaurant, right up until she set eyes on the group, and the group her. The silence that swept over the building was comical. She could practically feel the oncoming headache that this unfortunate meeting was about to cause her, and actually found herself wishing she had just stayed at her hotel room, or even locked herself up in Naruto's apartment. What the hell is she doing here? The girl of the group all but yelled, her finger pointed rudely at Temari. Yep, there was that headache. Why couldn't she have run into anyone else? Was her entire time in Konoha going to be plagued by bad luck? Don't be rude, Ino, the girl's sensei, Asuma, said. He swatted Ino's hand down gently before turning a kind smile towards Temari. Forgive my student. She lacks subtlety. Temari, right, I hope you are doing well. Sensei, why are you talking to the enemy? What a drag, Shikamaru groaned. Why do you always have to cause trouble wherever we go? Wanna say that again? The girl growled, waving her fist in the boy's face. He's got a point, Ino, Choji said, casually stuffing his face with a bag of chips. You really shouldn't just call someone an enemy. But she was there. She helped the invasion. Don't be naive, Ino, Asuma said. Do you really think she would be allowed back into the village if we were still enemies? Ino caught herself before she yelled anything further, glancing stupidly between her sensei and Temari. But what is she doing here? She asked. Why don't you ask me yourself? Temari snapped. Asuma laughed at the gape-mouth expression on Ino's face. Perhaps we could talk over a meal, he said, looking hopefully at the Suna nin. If that would be all right with you. I don't want to impose, but I am curious myself of your visit. Temari blinked at the man owlishly. The Hokage hasn't told you. Not yet, but we not long got back from a mission that had us away from the village for a little while, Asuma explained. I'm sure I'll be filled in on the situation soon enough. Well, I guess eating alone would be boring, Temari said. And it wouldn't hurt to be friendly this time around. Awesome. I'm starving, Choji said cheerfully as he sat into the booth, Shikamaru following close behind. Asuma sat with them, but Ino was more apprehensive. She stood there awkwardly for well over a minute before finally succumbing to peer pressure and sitting in the booth with her team, making sure to pick the spot straight across from Temari. Well, Ino asked. Well, what are you doing here? Temari hummed thoughtfully and gestured to the restaurant. I was hungry. I'm getting food. I mean, what are you doing in Konoha? Ino asked. She's here with a diplomatic group from Suna, Shikamaru interrupted. A protection detail. Or at least, that's my guess. Still a know-it-all, Temari muttered, earning a smirk from the boy. So Konoha and Suna are going to be allies again? Choji asked. That would be cool. As long as everything goes according to plan, Temari said. My father mentioned talk with the Council of Suna, Asuma said. But from what I remember, Suna did have some peculiar requests. He stopped talking quickly as Temari gave the Jonin a pointed stare that told him to not go any further. Requests? Ino asked incredulously. How do you people have the nerve? You invaded us. You tried to kill the Hokage. You have no right to ask for anything. Temari held her tongue and grit her teeth. She was confident she could pummel the girl easily enough, but sometimes it helped to have politics as a backing. Well, if that's what you have to say about it, Then I suppose you don't mind if I take your words as that of the village at whole? She asked, a victorious grin forming on her face as the expressions of the team in front of her began to drop into understanding. I'm sure your superiors would love to know that you took it upon yourself to weigh in on such a fragile political matter that they have so carefully managed up until now. Ino crossed her arms and turned her chin up. Nice try, but you're just a glorified bodyguard here, she said, ignoring the very intense stares from her team screaming at her to shut up while she could. Even if you weren't, you wouldn't jeopardize a peace treaty. Temari wanted to punch the girl in the face, her near-splintering grip on the table being testament to that. It wasn't until she caught the shocked expression of Asuma that she found herself able to ignore Ino. Asuma swallowed hard and leant forward with a look of concern so sincere that it immediately caught the attention of his students. It's you, isn't it? He asked, receiving the slightest of nods as an answer. And the Hokage agreed. Another nod. And ours is, he caught himself before saying anything and took a deep breath to calm down. As if to purposefully stoke the flames of curiosity in his team, Asuma stood up suddenly and exited the booth. I have to go talk to the Hokage, he said ominously, lowering a stern look at Ino. First lesson in village relations, Ino. Apologize. While you can. Without another word he left, leaving a dumbfounded trio of genin and one rather annoyed Temari. I thought it was bad enough when Baki did that sort of thing, she said. You Konoha lot sure have a knack for being dramatic. Hey, Shikamaru, what's going on? Choji asked. Shikamaru didn't take his eyes off Temari the whole time, studying her intently. Nothing good, he said. You can say that again, Temari said. And you don't even know the worst of it. You could tell us, he said. I could, she said. But then I would lose what little fun I get out of this whole mess. You aren't here on protection detail then, Shikamaru said, thinking aloud. But you aren't currently in any meeting with the Hokage or his council. You have a part to play in the peace negotiation without being required in the talking itself. Which leaves you as a bargaining chip. Question is, what kind? Try sacrificial lamb, she clarified. Shikamaru frowned. What a drag. What's she talking about? Ino asked meekly, still recovering from her sensei's disapproval. Suna made a peculiar request, Shikamaru explained. Obviously the Hokage accepted. If my guess is correct, then it makes sense for Suna to want a physical representation of the future peace and bonds our villages will aspire to develop. Which is where Temari comes in. Eldest child of the late Kazekage. Valuable to her people not just as a shinobi, but also as a political figure. But what does that mean? What it means, Temari interrupted, is that I'm here to stay. Ino stared wide-eyed at the girl, barely taking the time to blink as the gears attempted to grind into motion inside her pretty little head. So, like an exchange program, but for shinobi. Dear God, you really do have all the brain cells of the team, don't you? Temari asked Shikamaru. She's getting married, Ino, Shikamaru drawled. A political marriage to be precise. A rather old-fashioned way that allied parties would strengthen their bonds and hold each other to honor their deals. The high-pitched squeal that followed was deafening. Shikamaru could only groan in regret as he realized all too late that he had uttered the forbidden word in the presence of his teammate, no doubt dooming them all to the most uncomfortable lunch of their lives. Married, Ino yelled, hearts erupting from her eyes. Who are you going to? Wait, it's not Sasuke, is it? Temari sighed. If only, she said disappointedly. Emo boy isn't exactly my type, but at least I'd be confident I could have him wrapped around my finger by the end of the year. Or at the very least he'd be so focused on his own miserable existence that I could forget he even exists. No such luck, I'm afraid. Choji finally took a moment to ignore his desire for food. Wait, so if you know who you're marrying already, then they would know too, right? But we didn't know, so maybe it's not anyone we really know. You know him. We do. I really hope so, otherwise my next question is going to be a waste of time, Temari said. I have a bad feeling about this, Shikamaru said, shuddering as Temari leant towards them. What can you tell me about Naruto Uzumaki? You could have heard a dust mite fart. Ino sat with her mouth hanging open like a distraught fish, and Choji couldn't do more than stare longingly at his bag of chips as if wishing his appetite would come back to him. Shikamaru was even less composed, letting his head fall hard onto the table as two words slipped from his mouth. Oh. Baki had steeled his resolve in preparation for any and all possibilities that he could think of when dealing with Konoha. After all that had happened during the Chunin exam invasion, he knew there would be lingering tension. No one forgave or forgot so quickly. Thankfully, much to his surprise, the people of Konoha had been more welcoming than he could have hoped. While not outright accepting, he and the diplomats from Suna had not been openly insulted. The occasional glare or snide remark was easily ignored. What could not be so easily ignored was the Hokage's decision regarding the marriage proposal. He had put on a brave face for Temari's sake the night before, but he would not let it slide without an explanation. His village was going above and beyond in their offering of the poor girl. Sure, she had no bloodline herself, nor was she expressly powerful. The Kage's blood still ran through her veins though. Temari was more than just a potentially good shinobi, she was easily one of the most promising Suna had. If she were to have children, the chances of one of Suna's greatest bloodline limit being passed on was not something to scoff at. To be honest, she was the only chance with the way her brothers turned out. For such an offering to go unnoticed, or rather, unappreciated, was inexcusable. Hence, with what little time he had to himself, Baki had found his way to the Hokage's office, waiting patiently to be seen. He waited longer than expected, being ushered into the office some minutes after arriving and finding the Hokage being helped into his robe by a young woman. Oh, pardon the intrusion, Lord Hokage. Perhaps I should come back another time, Baki said with a deep bow. Not to worry, the Hokage said, thanking the woman and gesturing for her to leave. That is one of our medical nin. After everything that happened recently, they have been keeping a closer eye on me. Baki took a seat. The battle with your former student, he surmised. I imagine it took its toll. Hiruzen chuckled. Age has taken its toll. That battle only proved what damage was already done. But you prevailed. Barely, Hiruzen said. For what it's worth, Suna and Oto truly did have a chance that day. Had things gone differently, I'm sure I would not be here now to have this conversation. Baki swallowed nervously as he started to rethink his intentions for being here. Perhaps questioning the motives of the very person he had tried to help assassinate was not wise. It's for Temari, he thought before clearing his throat. Forgive me, Lord Hokage. I must admit my reasons for coming to see you are less than ideal, he said. You are here regarding Temari's position, Hiruzen said knowingly. You clearly care for the girl. It goes without question that you would be concerned about my choice in the matter at hand. I don't mean to offend. And I take no offense, Baki, he said. But you have questions, and I will answer what I can. Baki thought for a moment before speaking. I saw what the boy is capable of during the exams. The reports I have heard and read about his part to play in the invasion, his ability to defeat our own Jinchuriki, only add to my concerns, he said. I guess, in a sense, I would like to know if Temari will be safe with your decision. Hiruzen took a deep breath. Your suspicions and worries are well founded, he admitted. There is no point in trying to hide it. Naruto is, much like your own Jinchuriki, an unpredictable asset. I would like to play along with the foolish notion the rest of the village maintain by saying we have him under control, but the truth is we don't. He abides by my rules to an acceptable extent. Even listens to me more often than not. But make no mistake when I say that he is loyal to himself and himself alone. Yet he protected the village. Baki asked incredulously. He fought impossible odds against an unleashed Jinchuriki to protect others. It is exactly that kind of thinking that has stayed the fears of so many in this village, the Hokage said sadly. The outcome can always be twisted so easily to make it seem appeasing to the masses. The reality is much less so. What do you mean? Naruto has never once fought for the sake of Konoha. He has never attempted to protect his fellow shinobi, and he certainly did not care for the lives of others when he confronted young Gaara, he said. There is only ever one reason, that I've found so far, for Naruto to fight anything. To prove that he can. Baki frowned deeply and looked at the old man with disapproval. So, Konoha made the same mistake as Suna, he said. Trying to make a weapon of a child. I guess ultimately, we all must suffer for our hubris and cruelty. We did not do as your Kage did, Hiruzen said sharply. Konoha has no need for such a weapon, nor would we risk the backlash of it failing as your attempts did. No, we failed in much more shameful ways. Hiruzen sighed deeply and reached into one of the drawers of his desk, pulling out an item wrapped in cloth and placing it gently before Baki. I would have never given Suna's marriage proposal a second glance had Temari not been the candidate you offered. After reading her file, I could not help but make the most of an opportunity such as that. A girl, close enough in age, determined and willful, strong in her own regard, with years of experience living around an unstable Jinchuriki. The odds were impossible. All I need was to ensure she herself was willing to go through with it. You asked if Temari would be safe. I believe she will be. You are concerned that my decision is an insult to your village. That I can understand. And so, if you're willing to take an oath of secrecy, I can finally explain. You would trust me to keep a secret before our alliance is truly solidified? Baki asked. Hiruzen smiled. I am confident that my explanation will go some lengths in helping solidify the alliance between our villages, he said. Very well then. Do you know what this is? Hiruzen asked, carefully unfolding the cloth to reveal a three-pronged kunai. Baki stared at the kunai with all the intensity his one eye could allow. A dozen puzzle pieces he didn't know were connected suddenly forcing their way together in his mind. It was a truly painful experience. He should have seen this coming, should have noticed the signs. It was all far too convenient, so stupidly bold that even those who would suspect never held such suspicions for long. The idea was just so ridiculous. Naruto is the fourth Hokage's son, Hiruzen finished. His only child, born the night of the Kyuubi attack. The night the fourth and his wife died. They used their final moments to seal the Kyuubi into Naruto, and entrusted his safety and well-being to me. How is this possible? Baki asked. How does the world not already know of this? Such a secret should be impossible, especially considering the resemblance. I feared as much myself when I first decided to keep his identity a secret, Hiruzen said. However, as I'm sure you are now aware by your own disbelief, having such a bold resemblance is a trait easily overlooked when nothing else matches up. By some miracle, my failure was my success. Although ultimately neglecting the boy in favor of the village at large, I accidentally created the perfect circumstances for him to slip mostly unnoticed by any who would seek his death or capture. Once I realized my fault in the matter, it was already far too late, so I made the most of a bad situation. Does the boy even know his lineage? Hiruzen shook his head. I couldn't say, he said. Why are you telling me this at all? Baki asked. If only I am to know, then the importance of who he is will be meaningless to my village at large. They will continue to think you insulted us by wedding Temari to a random boy who happens to be a Jinchuriki. What is it you are hoping to gain here? I have failed Naruto at almost every turn of his life. This marriage is finally a chance I have to do some good for the boy, with Temari's help that is, he said. Temari is a strong girl, but she is still young. She will need guidance through things yet to come, and will require someone she trusts to confide in. She trusts you undoubtedly. As such, it is important that you and I come to an understanding so that we might help guide both of them to the best outcome possible. You're using us to make up for your own failures, Baki muttered in annoyance. Yes, Hiruzen admitted, but you are not in a position to be upset about that, so do forgive me for kicking you while you are down. Before Baki could say anything further, the office door was slammed open, Asuma charging in with an expression of rage focused on the Hokage. What the hell is wrong with you? He yelled. Have you finally gone senile? Or are you just trying to get more blood on your hands before you finally die? Hiruzen stared his son down. You figured it out, I see. Figured it out. I just spoke to a girl who has no idea whatsoever as to what is in store for her. Asuma said. You better have a very good reason for this, or so help me I will. He stopped suddenly, his eyes suddenly fixated on the kunai on the desk. You didn't. He did, Baki said. And as it stands, I do have one question begging to be answered. Where is Naruto? Baki asked. If I am to agree to go along with any of this, I will need to meet him for myself. Hiruzen gave a cautious look to his son. Someone has been sent to collect him, but it may take some time, he said. He is training. Asuma continued to glare at the old man as he carefully placed the kunai back into his desk. While we wait, allow me to explain. Naruto collapsed to his knees. His arms buckled under his weight as he fell forward and his face crashed into the dirt. The sickly red chakra that had enveloped him slowly receded back into his body, leaving no more than its essence in the air. He couldn't move. The pain that had been coursing through his body had now completely faded to a numbness of existence. Between each labored breath he took in the pleasant moments of silence that filled the forest around him, it almost made him smile victoriously. Everything had left in fear, and nothing had come searching for a fight. He was stronger than the forest, and now it knew that. His eyes began to lose the fight to stay open, and he soon found himself falling into the blissful darkness of his mindscape. It was, to put it plainly, a depressingly bland place, even by his standards. A vast open space, barely a light save for the giant gate separating the seemingly endless space into two halves. He remembered the first time he had found himself in this place. He was young, scared, alone. This place had been nothing but a cold and confusing prison for him to escape to when things got too hard in the real world. But not anymore. He took a deep breath as he felt his body warming up. A faint orange glow seeped towards him from between the cage bars, with a darker mist flowing from the series of cracks that had formed in the seal over the years. You're getting stronger, boy. Naruto grit his teeth in annoyance. Not strong enough, he said. I can't form 3 tails. My body barely works with 2 tails. I need more. The Kyuubi emerged from the shadows and stared down at Naruto, a toothy grin on its maw. Patience, boy, the fox said. We have waited this long. Your body is still young and malleable. Allow it to grow, but it will take too long. Time is on our side, it said. It matters not how long it takes us, only that we succeed. Naruto frowned. The forest of death has nothing left to offer us, he said. We need a bigger challenge. Then we find something stronger, someone stronger, the Kyuubi said with excitement. Let us show the world what true power is. Naruto smiled at the fox and nodded, walking up to the cage doors and placing his hands upon the bars. As the Biju's chakra began to flow directly into him, he could feel his body healing faster. He would meet with the Hokage once he had recovered. Surely the old man would have something in mind by now to keep him entertained. Out in the real world, Jiraiya watched on in concern as Naruto's body bubbled with the Kyuubi's chakra. Things were progressing much faster than he had first thought. If Naruto was already trying to draw out 3 tails worth of the Biju, then there was no telling what destruction he could cause if he lost control. I hope you know what you're doing, Sarutobi. Naruto wasn't shocked to wake up in his own bed. Despite having exhausted himself to the point of passing out, he still had the luxury of maintaining some level of awareness while inside his mindscape. He knew Jiraiya had been spying on him while he trained. It had become expected at this point. Whenever the Sannin was around the village, he would often spend all his free time following Naruto like a bad stench that he couldn't shake. By this stage it was easily ignored, albeit a constant annoyance. He was relieved to find his body held onto none of the pain and aches of his prior activity. The Kyuubi's chakra was gradually getting more in tune with his body. This time last year he would have been left recovering for nearly a week after attempting to pull more than a tail's worth of chakra from the seal. It seemed the fox was right after all. The more he used, the stronger he was getting. Soon he would be able to use 3 tails, enough to ensure that the Anbu couldn't stop him anymore. If only things were that simple. Get up, kid, Jiraiya said. I know you aren't asleep. What are you doing in my apartment? Naruto said coldly, his eyes opening into a glare at the man. I wasn't about to leave you laying in the forest of death. I would have been fine, he groaned, getting up from his bed before pausing suddenly and sniffing the air. Someone was here. Jiraiya chuckled. That sense of smell you have never ceases to creep me out, he said. But you and I both know that no one comes here anymore, Naruto. Not since Kakashi started keeping an eye on things. Naruto inhaled deeply. Kakashi was here too, he said. With a girl, that last part was said with less frustration and more curiosity, catching even Jiraiya off guard. You sure about that? The Sannin asked. I need to talk to the Hokage. Actually, Jiraiya interjected quickly. That's why I'm here. The Hokage wanted me to prolong a message. He should have sent Kakashi, Naruto muttered. This is important, Naruto, Jiraiya said sternly. Something has come up, and whether you like it or not, you have been selected to be Konoha's representative in the matter. Now, I understand your opinion on the village and its politics, but we need you to hear this out and do the right thing. Naruto snarled at the Sannin. You don't get to talk about doing the right thing, he growled out. Enough, Naruto. I don't care what you think of me. The Hokage is the one asking this of you. Either you listen and accept, or he will suspend your shinobi privileges. Naruto bit his tongue at that statement. He wasn't an idiot. There was no way he could butt heads with the Hokage, or Jiraiya. Refusal to cooperate would only end to him being locked away with enough chakra-restricting seals to ensure not even the Kyuubi could help him get out. He didn't have to like it, but for the time being it was easy to go along with the village's wishes whenever necessary. They were willing to turn a blind eye to a lot of things, but directly disobeying the Hokage was a stretch even for him. I'm listening. Suna has sent diplomats to negotiate a treaty with us, Jiraiya said. Is Gaara with them? Naruto asked with the slightest hint of excitement. No. The Jinchuriki was not allowed to return until the treaty is solidified, Jiraiya explained. But there is someone you will need to meet, and we need you to be nice. Naruto frowned. I won't like this, will I? He asked, receiving no change of expression from the man. Who? The daughter of the Cage, Temari. I believe you saw her during the Chunin exams. Why? Jiraiya took a deep breath. This was where things were really going to get difficult. Because you will need to get to know her, personally. Is she a target? Naruto asked. Or someone close to her? No, well, look, it's complicated, and you aren't going to be happy about it, but trust me when I say this can work to your advantage, Jiraiya said. Suna has offered her to Konoha as their half of a political marriage agreement, and Konoha has chosen you as our half. Naruto's eye twitched. You know I hate your jokes. It's not a joke, Naruto. This is real. You were the one chosen to represent the village in this marriage. I refuse. You don't have a choice. I'll leave. I'll bring you back. I'll kill you. Quote, comma, quote. Quote, comma, quote. You hit your head, didn't you? Jiraiya asked jokingly. Naruto grumbled a few choice words under his breath. There's nothing I can do about this. He asked. No. What does this mean for me? In short, it means you're getting married, Jiraiya said. In broader terms, you'll have to keep up good appearances for the village's sake. It won't look good if she's miserable being with you, so you'll have to at least try and keep her happy, and most importantly, you'll have to keep her safe. Naruto gave the man a curious look. Safe. Jiraiya nodded, internally smirking victoriously as Naruto took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. Now all he had to do was reel it all in, sit back, and watch. Yes, Naruto. Safe, he said. Temari is an important figure to Suna, and this marriage will make her important to Konoha as well. What with the recent invasion, it makes sense that there are those who would rather she and Suna not get this opportunity. Not to mention the other villages who would seek to ruin this chance at our alliance holding true. It's likely that her life will be at risk as soon as word of this spreads. You want me to be a bodyguard? Naruto asked skeptically. After what happened in Wave Country. That's what we are counting on, Jiraiya said, a twinge of guilt burning in the back of his mind. It was bad enough that he had a part to play in what Naruto had become, but playing on the darkest aspects of the boy's mind was sickening. It made him feel too much like Orochimaru to be comfortable with. Naruto's lips ever so slightly twitched at the corners, threatening an all-too-knowing smile as things clicked in his head. Protect her, by any means. Jiraiya looked away in shame, already regretting what he was about to say. By any means, Naruto, he said. Her safety, this marriage, is important to Konoha. Unless the Hokage himself specifies otherwise, her safety takes precedence over everything else, over anyone else. Naruto seemed to take a moment to think Jiraiya's words over. This is what the old man said. He inquired cautiously. The Hokage will confirm the parameters of the agreement with you when you meet with him. When? As soon as you're ready. You will also have to properly introduce yourself to Temari, and you will both have to officially agree to the marriage in front of the Hokage and Suna diplomats, Jiraiya explained. Naruto nodded. I'll think about it, but I'm eating first, he said, making his way to the door. Come get me when everyone else is ready. Naruto, Jiraiya said, halting the boy suddenly and earning him a very annoyed look. This is going to be a good thing. Trust me. We will see, Naruto said coldly before slamming the door behind him. Yeah, I guess we will. Temari remained displeased with her attempts to learn anything substantial about her soon-to-be husband. It had proven to be a painfully uninsightful venture from which she learned nothing more than just how miserable things were going to be for her. Shikamaru had been at least partially helpful, but only to the extent of telling her what Naruto was like during the academy years. Apparently when he wasn't busy putting other kids in the hospital for any slight against him, he mostly kept to himself. The only positive she got from that was that Naruto didn't actively kill any other kids whilst in the academy. That was where the good news ended. Apparently Ino was friends with the pink-haired member of Naruto's genin team. Temari couldn't tell if the stories were exaggerated, her only comparison being the annoyingly vague mission reports in his file, but what Ino had supposedly heard was unsettling, for them anyway. For Temari, it was like any other day of her life. Gaara was killing people with barely any restraint before he was a genin, so by her standards Naruto was at least less insane than him, or she hoped so. Didn't mean she misunderstood the gravity of the story. Gaara made a reputation of himself by being untouchable. Naruto was making his own similar reputation of being unkillable. Between wearing his orange tracksuit as a target on his back, and his team's strange knack for getting themselves in much more danger than they should have been, Naruto was slowly putting that reputation to the test. Temari. She snapped out of her thoughts as Baki entered her room. Yes, we have been summoned by the Hokage, Baki said. Oh, give me a minute and I'll be good to go, she said, already up and hurriedly tying her hair up. Has something happened? Naruto has returned, Baki said, giving Temari a knowing look. We have all been summoned. You are to meet him, and you both will agree officially to the marriage before everyone. Temari froze for a moment before taking a deep breath. She knew what that meant. I may need a little longer, she said nervously. Baki nodded. Take your time. We are not in a rush. She waited for Baki to leave before she grabbed two large tufts of her hair in frustration. He didn't say it outright, but Baki knew exactly what to say to get the message across. He had been lenient on her during the travels here and all the way up until now, letting her still present herself as a kunoichi of Suna, allowing her to still dress in her preferred attire. It had helped her keep her composure with everything that was happening. It appeared that now was the time that luxury came to an end. There was a certain level of presentation expected by someone in her current position. She let her hair go and went to the wardrobe. While she may have held off on this part for as long as she could, that didn't mean she came unprepared. It wasn't much. A simple long black dress with white trim, a red sash to go with it. Not much of an outfit by diplomacy standards, but it was as far as she was willing to go. Temari understood the importance of looking the part, so she would try. She was expected to win Konoha and Naruto over with her looks. There wasn't any point in fighting. She took what little time she had to get dressed and make sure everything was in order. She decided that her standard 4-ponytail style of hair was maybe a tad too much and instead opted for a tidier single ponytail. The most painful part came when she had to forego tying her forehead protector around her neck, leaving her village's symbol resting on the bed. A glance in the mirror was all she needed to know that the dress looked good, her body finally starting to fill in where it mattered. The hair would definitely have to go back to normal as soon as this was over. It was dark when they reached the Hokage's office. Temari wasn't exactly sure what to expect this time around, but upon entering she found herself uniquely surprised. The Hokage was obviously there, as were his two advisors, but there were also several other faces. Some she recognized, notable clan heads of the village and reputable shinobi in their own right, but others were unknown to her, such as a heavily bandaged old man lurking in the corner. While she didn't have any issues with anyone present that she knew of, the extra eyes on her did very little to ease her discomfort. The anxiety had already started to creep its way out of the depths, the tightness in her jaw was only the start. As she and the diplomats made themselves known, Temari noticed one glaring detail missing from the scene before her. Naruto himself was notably not around. A confusing twisted sense of relief and panic started swirling in her stomach. Had he backed out? Was the marriage proposal a failure? What was going to happen now? Was she finally free from this responsibility? Too many thoughts at once and not enough time to carefully shut them all up. How was the sightseeing? Koharu asked, earning a jump of surprise from the girl. Relax. As much as I would love to live in a fairy tale, I know better than anyone that my days of sneaking up on people are long gone. You're lost in your thoughts, dear. What's troubling you? Forgive me, I don't mean to be rude, Temari said softly, bowing slightly to the older woman. Koharu chuckled. Don't fret, she said. This is a big deal for you. Your future hangs in the balance. No one here would blame you for being a little distracted. Why are there so many people here? Temari asked. Politics is a crowd sport, dear, the old woman said with a smirk. No one likes the responsibility, but the feeling of being important to the village is addictive to most. The clan heads have no say in the matter, but if letting them sit in on such events and allowing them to have an opinion makes them feel special, then all the better. I imagine Suna handles such affairs differently. My father never coddled anyone's pride, Temari said. If they didn't need to be around, then they weren't. No one liked it, but no one challenged it either. Efficient. I can respect that. Short-sighted perhaps. Konoha prides itself on the strength of our clans, but it is foolish to assume such tactics would work for all villages. It's kind of nice, Temari said. It can be, sometimes. I don't mean to ask out of turn, but isn't someone missing? Koharu nodded knowingly. You are right to be curious, she said. Many here are just as interested to see the outcome. The Hokage insists the boy will show. And what do you think? I think the boy is problematic at the best of times. If he knew not showing up would make everyone stress, then he would have to be dragged kicking and screaming. Temari gave the woman a strange look. You don't talk about him like you hate him, she said. Everyone else is afraid of him, or talk about him like he's the plague. Koharu scoffed. I'm far too old to be afraid of some child, she said. Naruto is a headache. Unruly and not without issues, but I've seen worse. Hate is also something I cannot afford to waste time with. If I hated everyone that caused me annoyance, half the world would be on that list. Should I be worried? Temari asked. Everyone I've spoken to won't give me a straight answer. You know, the boy would be mad to harm you. So, he isn't crazy. If only things were that simple, Koharu said longingly. Sorry to cut things short, my dear. I must take my place. Keep your chin up and don't let this riff-raff make you second-guess yourself. Temari watched as the elderly woman made her way towards the Hokage, the clan heads and others following suit and breaking from their small groups of conversation to form a more official layout. Even Baki eventually had to leave her side and take his place, leaving her to stand alone before the group. If there was ever a time for God to end her suffering, now would be the perfect moment. She wasn't even sure why things had suddenly gotten so formal. Naruto still hadn't showed up. The whole room was just staring at her awkwardly, as if waiting impatiently for her to start tap dancing or break out into song. Then the door opened slightly. Temari had to fight the urge to roll her eyes as Kakashi poked his head around the door and gave a sheepish eye smile. It was clearly not only her who was annoyed at the man's antics, with at least a couple of those present not trying to hide their displeasure. Nothing got any better when he opened the door all the way, waltzing in as if he weren't late, the subject of everyone's curiosity casually following behind him. For what it was worth, Naruto didn't immediately give off an impending sense of doom to Temari. He looked bored and uninterested at best, barely even looking at her for more than a moment as he scanned the room. She wasn't sure if that was a good thing or if he was intentionally trying to insult her existence. Finally seeing him in person for the first time in a month was interesting though. She had taken very little notice of him during the exams until the final stage, but even then, her mind had been too preoccupied to truly take in his appearance. It was not often she met many other blondes. Even if her hair was noticeably less vibrant with color, it was still a nice thing to notice. He was still shorter than her, but somehow it seemed less so than before. He couldn't have gotten taller in a month, could he? No, she was definitely remembering things wrong. About damn time, Sum said. Can we hurry up and get this over with? I have better things to be doing. Of course, Hiruzen said, gesturing for everyone to take their respective seats and for Naruto and Temari to take their place center stage, so to speak. Now that everyone is here, we may proceed. Are we sure this is something we are willing to agree to? Inoichi asked. You have objections? Homura inquired. I think it's fair to say that we are all curious as to the circumstances at hand, Shikaku said. This is not some standard peace deal. What it stands for is one thing, but if I'm being honest, most of us are more curious as to what it means. As the parents of the next generation of valuable clan heirs, this meeting could easily have started on a far less than friendly tone. Your concerns are noted, but such a discussion will be had at a later date, Hiruzen said. Why not now? Sume asked sharply. Maybe we can avoid this mess to begin with. Because I said, Hiruzen snapped. Do not fool yourselves into thinking that any amount of words and complaints will change the outcome of tonight. You are here to bear witness to the decision we have made. The only ones who can change what will happen here are standing before you now. So please, do pay attention. Temari, Naruto, if you would. Temari was quick to start on K. She stepped forward and bowed deeply. Thank you, Lord Hokage, she said. I am honored to be here. All of your presence means a lot to both myself and my village. The acceptance of our proposal, and by extension, me as the candidate, goes a long way towards rekindling the friendship our villages have shared over the years. While not unexpected, Temari was a little surprised to see her words had at least somewhat charmed the clan heads. A few prideful smiles being shared as she gave them the satisfaction of groveling at their feet. It was sad to see from the members of a village that often claimed to be above such things. It was not to last, thankfully, as all attention quickly turned to Naruto, who much to his credit had not reacted to her little speech. I'm not sucking up, he said, ignoring everyone else and staring down the Hokage. Temari gave the boy a stupid look. Was he trying to piss them off? The whole room was death glaring him, save for Sume, the Inuzuka clan head, who was actively holding back the urge to laugh. Naruto, Hiruzen said warningly. Naruto continued to stare blankly. No, ahem, maybe it is wise to simply move on, Koharu said. Very well. As you are all aware by now, we are here to officiate the proposal made to us by Suna, Hiruzen began. A political marriage is an uncommon practice, but holds its place firmly in the history of Konoha and all the greater villages. As such, it was not without much deliberation that I chose to accept their offer. To say that Temari is the perfect candidate would be an understatement. Suna could not have offered better, or more meaningful. The meaning behind such an offering has not been lost on me, and I trust it has not been lost on any of you, he said, earning several nods of agreement and understanding. Your collective concerns, I might add, are justified, he continued. During the time I had to consider my response, I did in fact think of approaching several of you about your children's potential in representing our village in this matter. Needless to say, I came to a better solution. You call this better? Inoichi asked skeptically. Do you have a better idea? Hiruzen asked. No one said a word, leaving the room in a state of awkward silence. My choice stands, he said. Naruto will act as Konoha's candidate for the marriage. The two need only agree to the terms officially before us all here. From there, dates can be set and progress made towards ensuring a lasting peace and bond with Suna. Everyone once again turned their eyes to the two standing before them. Temari. Her heart was both pounding in her chest and yet threatening to stop at any moment. Each slow agonizing beat forcing tiny breaths from her lungs. It hurt, but thankfully the pain was a good grounding sensation. Yes, Lord Hokage. Hiruzen cleared his throat. Do you, Temari of the Sand, agree and accept the terms set forth by your village and its council? Do you understand and accept all of the conditions and expectations laid out before you in this marriage? I do. And you, Naruto, the Hokage said. Do you agree and accept the terms put forth by myself and the village of Konoha? Do you understand the expectations we have for you and are you willing to proceed with them? Temari's eyes were glued to the Jinchuriki, patiently watching for some sort of change, any reaction or inclination into what he was thinking. It was small, but there was a slight shift in his features, glancing changes, as if he was talking to himself in his head. Eventually his eyes turned to her, an intense gaze that somehow made her forget about all the other eyes on her in the moment. She knew what he was doing. Watching her as she watched him, scanning her for something. It dawned on her that she had no idea what he could possibly be looking for. It wasn't until his eyes drifted down to her hands that she even noticed her own minute tremors. On reflex, she clenched her hands together. It was bound to happen, but Temari wasn't quite ready for the instance that they locked eyes. She was embarrassed to admit that she knew how pathetic the look she was giving him was. Pleading, full of anxiety and unsureness, practically begging him to go along with all this mess. Oh, how she loathed the pitiful thing she was right now. She wanted all of this to be over as quickly as possible, to return to some semblance of normalcy. Whatever normal was supposed to be after tonight. No. And just like that, the world was chaos again. Naruto didn't even wait for anyone's response, already making his way to the door before he had finished answering. The door closed behind him and everyone stared at it in some variation of shock or surprise. None more so than Temari. But shock was short-lived. Within seconds it had grown to confusion, then it swelled into frustration, until eventually it burst out of her in rage. What the? She said, amusingly unaware of the company she was in. Who the hell does he? What? Why the? Is it? I'll kill him. With that, Temari made off after Naruto, slamming the door behind her as she went, unknowingly leaving a room of highly amused expressions. Kakashi, please make sure nothing unfortunate happens, Hiruzen said, the masked man vanishing quickly. Yeah, make sure that girl doesn't kill the brat. If anyone has a hope in hell of getting the job done, it's her right now, Sum said with a chuckle. Forgive her outburst, Baki said. I will go and ensure things are okay. Give the poor girl some space, Koharu said. As if it isn't bad enough that we put her on the spot like this. That brat just had to go and make things difficult, again. I thought you said the boy had already agreed. Baki asked the Hokage, directing everyone's attention to the old man. Hiruzen groaned deeply as he rubbed his tired eyes. It is complicated, he said in frustration. Something is obviously going on. Should we be concerned about that? Inoichi asked cautiously, the second meaning of his words not going amiss by those listening. The fear of the Kyuubi's influence was always in the back of their minds. While mostly unfounded, it never hurt to be vigilant wherever Naruto was involved. No, Hiruzen said, waving his hand at them. I will handle it. This meeting is obviously at an end. My apologies for wasting all your time. Should the need arise to reconvene, I will inform you all. Konoha was a beautiful village. No one was going to deny that, especially not Temari. Somehow, at night, the beauty was only more noticeable. Streets lit up for hours, people living life to the fullest with all the spare time they had. It was something Suna had been jealous of. The harsh climate they lived in didn't leave a lot to be enjoyed, whatever time wasn't spent working was wasted enduring the elements. But here, it was clear, a gentle chill in the passing breeze barely offering discomfort as the village thrived. Nowhere was this scene more visible, more potent, than from atop the Hokage monument. A sight to see was an understatement. While all the major villages, and even several of the lesser-known ones had their tourist attractions, none quite compared to Konoha. The whole village on display for the world to see, its glory and majesty was truly humbling. The only issue Temari had with the view, was the moron standing in the way of it. What the hell do you think you're doing? She asked. Naruto shrugged. Avoiding people. Temari's eye twitched. You can't just walk out on this. I can. You didn't even take time to consider it. Naruto quirked his head at her curiously. You want this to happen? To be forced to marry me? He asked. Of course I don't. I didn't want any of this. But my village has expectations of me, and I'll sooner die than let you it all up after all the stress I just put myself through to agree to go along with it all. She yelled. You should have refused. Could have saved us both the trouble. I can't refuse. Not anymore. And neither can you. Naruto's eyes narrowed at the girl. You don't get to tell me what to do, he said warningly. Temari scoffed at him. I don't care what you do, as long as you don't ruin this, she said. I don't know what the Hokage told you, or what your village expects of you, but I don't give a shit. My village needs this to happen, I need this to happen. So, here's what's going to happen, you're gonna go back to the Hokage and apologize. You're going to agree to the marriage, Then, once everything is finished, we can go about our lives as if neither of us exists, save for the occasional necessary meeting or public show. I stay out of your way, you stay out of mine. Why should I? Because if you don't, I'll make it my life's mission to make sure you regret it. The smile he gave her was almost enough to have her seeing red. It was some twisted combination of smug and challenging. I'd like to see you trail. Crack. No sooner had the words left his mouth had Temari's fist collided with his face. The satisfactory crunch of his nose under her knuckles brought her own twisted smile to her face as she waited for him to stumble back, but he didn't. Her face fell slightly as he held firm against her punch, still staring at her, his smile never leaving his stupid face even while blood began to run from his nose. She didn't get a chance to recoil at the sight before he grabbed her wrist hard enough to hurt, twisted her arm up behind her back and forced her down to her knees. The pin-prick sensation of a kunai at her throat was all the warning Temari got as she closed her eyes and waited, and waited. Temari felt the hold on her arm ease and the kunai pull away slowly from her skin. She opened her eyes slowly and turned her head up to look at him. He was spaced out. She wasn't sure how to describe it, but it was obvious he wasn't focused. It reminded her of how he appeared in the Hokage's office, as though he was lost in thought, only this time was different, as if he was barely there at all. Naruto. Temari glanced at Kakashi quickly before turning back to Naruto, watching as he came to. He stared at her with what looked like curiosity for a moment until he let go of her and let her put some distance between them. She watched him like a hawk while he put away his kunai and wiped the blood from his face, his nose already healing, then finally turned to Kakashi. Tell the Hokage I will consider the proposal further, he said, giving Temari a strange look. He started walking away before either of them could say anything, leaving a flabbergasted Temari and a visibly intrigued Kakashi in his wake. Are you alright? Kakashi asked Temari. I'm fine, she said, rubbing her wrist slightly. I think. Kakashi hummed thoughtfully in agreement. That was a little strange, even by Naruto's standards, he said. I don't even understand what just happened. If I was to hazard a guess, I'd say you've managed to make an impression on him, Kakashi said. Temari frowned as she stared in the direction Naruto had gone. Is that good, or bad? Wouldn't have a clue, he answered with an eye smile. Of course you don't, Temari said with a groan. So, what now? I should go and let the Hokage know the good news. You should go and get that wrist looked at. Naruto has a tendency to not know his own strength, he said, offering a wave goodbye as he vanished in a swirl of leaves. Temari wiped the small spot of blood from her neck and sat down atop the Hokage monument, idly rubbing her fingers dry. She knew things weren't going to be easy. That much had been clear since before she even left Suna. But now it was starting to really look like she would be giving her life in service to her village in a much more literal sense. If the way Naruto was acting towards her was any indication, then at least she had a chance of making things work to her advantage. Konoha might be happy to tiptoe around the issue, but Temari wasn't about to put up with this shit without putting up some kind of a fight. Why are we here? Naruto asked, finding himself, for the first time in a long time, genuinely confused by the situation he found himself in. He felt the Kyuubi's chakra bleed into his eyes, turning them a dark red and lighting up the world in a way that always amazed him. Seeing the world as a Biju did was one of the few things in life he found he truly enjoyed. We are observing, the Kyuubi said plainly. With his eyes adjusting to the chakra, Naruto finally turned his attention to their supposed target of interest. Luckily, or stupidly, Temari hadn't noticed him sitting on the roof of the building across from her hotel room. He had been following her since the Hokage monument at the Kyuubi's request, but the fox had been infuriatingly tight-lipped about the reason why. So far, aside from briefly showing up to the hospital, the girl had done nothing of interest. Even now, as she sat on her bed scrawling over his file for the umpteenth time, there was nothing Naruto could see as being useful to observe. You stopped me from killing her, he said. Why? This girl holds political standing among her people, no? Yes. But if she marries me, she will become part of Konoha. What use will she be? The Hokage is attempting to contain us, the Kyuubi said. As much as it sickens me to say, but it may do us well to play it safe for the moment. That accursed Sanin is still lurking around. The last thing we need is him getting suspicious and tampering with the seal. All of our progress could be ruined. And the girl is our solution. The old fool thinks he can tie us down with her. Keep tabs on us. Control us. There is no harm in making him think his little scheme is working. You expect me to play along with this. I expect you to do whatever is necessary to ensure these insufferable idiots don't keep such a close eye on us. It is challenging enough for you to do what is necessary as it is without further hindrance. We need a cover. This girl is perfect. An opportunity like this will not simply fall into your lap again. Naruto scrunched his nose. How long do I have to do this for? As long as it takes, boy. All we need is time. Naruto sighed deeply as he continued to watch Temari. Somewhere along the line she had fallen asleep on top of the pages of his file. He chose to take this opportunity to find out just what information the old man had given her. Being careful was a no-brainer. There had to be Anbu keeping tabs on the hotel, and he didn't want to get caught up in another chase with them anytime soon. They were annoyingly persistent, even commendably so, but he didn't have time to test his speed right now. Once inside he found the security to be rather lacking. Temari was peaceful. At least Naruto thought so. Most people were when they slept, but he found himself lingering on her longer than he thought he should. Whether it was curiosity or something else, he couldn't say, yet his eyes lingered still. It was good perhaps. If he was going to marry her then at the very least, he would need to be able to tolerate her. If he could get her to sleep more often than not then it would be easy. His eyes began to wander, taking in everything he could of her while her defenses were down. She was strong. His freshly healed nose could attest to that. But she was also kind of pretty. He shook his head of the thought. What she looked like didn't matter. The Kyuubi said she could be valuable so he would make sure she could be. Outside of that he didn't need the distraction. As he carefully went through the pages of the file, making sure to be gentle as he moved her body off of the pages underneath her, he realized just how little the Hokage had given Temari to work with. Basic knowledge, more than anyone outside of the village would have, but still nothing substantial. Nothing of his past or time before the academy. Skeleton mission reports. A majority of what she could learn from the file was what she could have already ascertained during the Chunin exams. It was the page she had fallen asleep reading that had him the most intrigued. The entire time he had been watching her go over the file, she continued to go back to this page, over and over again, staring at it endlessly as if it held some great answer for her. It was the page regarding his Jinchuriki status. Again, not much to work with, yet she was fixated on it. Perhaps it was a curiosity she held before him, spurred by her brother's shared circumstances. Maybe she and her village had plans for him now that they knew what he was. It didn't matter. The Hokage, Temari, Suna, it didn't matter who was using who. All that mattered was that no one got in his way. Naruto took the time to carefully put the file back together and place it on the bedside table. This little venture had proven to be rather pointless, but at least he knew where things stood. He turned out the light as he went, taking a quick second to once again look back at the sleeping form of Temari. You suck at pretending. Temari sat up but not fast enough to catch a glimpse of him before he was gone. She let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding and went to close the window. There was no way the window being closed or not was going to make a difference. If someone wanted her dead, she'd be dead. She was almost sure that's what Naruto was sneaking in here to do. Much to her annoyance, his intentions and true character continued to elude her. Only the rest of my life left to put up with this shit, she thought to herself cynically. I need a drink.